In a heated argument, I accidentally confessed cheating on him, and he took brutal revenge.
My name is Ava and I am 31 years old. I have been married to Brian for the past 6 years. Brian used to work for my father's legal firm. He was a junior intern and slowly worked his way up to become a junior partner in the firm. I met him at one of my father's office parties, and although I did not like him immediately, we slowly grew close and eventually got married when both my parents met with a car accident and died. I was 25 years old then. I have a kid sister, Mia, who is 15 years younger to me. She was an unplanned child and my parents decided to keep the baby. I am very grateful to my parents for this decision as Mia was the best thing that ever happened to me. She means everything to me and I have taken care of her right from the day she was born. I have always thought of her more as my baby than my sister and I love her a lot. We were once a happy family until the news of my parents' accident reached us. I rushed to the hospital with Mia, who was still half asleep. After a few hours, they were declared dead and our entire world shattered around us. Brian came to the hospital and took over the paperwork and everything there was to. He would stay with us at home and make sure that we were fed and helped us to move on with our lives. It was a very difficult phase for us, especially since Mia was only 12 then. It was hard for her to accept the fact that she would have to grow up alone without our parents around. After a few weeks, I started going to the office to manage the firm, but I never showed any interest in it. It was Dad who took care of everything and I had no idea how things worked. Brian helped me in dealing with things at work, but it was all too complicated for me. I missed Dad a lot and could not focus on work. I requested Brian to take care of everything as I couldn't leave me alone for too long. Brian understood my situation and assured me that he would handle everything at the office. He recognized the importance of family and was willing to support me during this difficult time. With his help, I felt a sense of relief knowing that I could rely on him while I focused on being there for Mia. Brian had taken over my dad's firm and organized it very well after all the initial chaos after his death. I was grateful to him for it. I had seen a different side of him which was more responsible, which really fascinated me. I think this quality of his started attracting me towards him. He not only took over the company successfully but also took very good care of me and Mia as if we were his own family. Mia always looked forward to spending time with him. She asked me one day if Brian could stay with us. It would be the best thing for her as she would get to see him every day. This made me start thinking if there was some way I could make this happen. I knew that marriage was not something I could propose to Brian as it would be absurd to get married to him just for the sake of Mia. I did not even feel romantically interested in him. As the days went by, he would come home often and spend time with Mia. We started spending time like a family and soon I realized that it was not a bad idea to actually get married to Brian. One day, after Mia slept, I spoke to Brian and asked him if he had any romantic interests in his life. He found it quite weird but soon understood what I was getting at. He replied he did not have anyone special in his life. This is how our relationship started. We did not have a very romantic, fairy tale kind of a love story, but we made do with each other. Very soon, we both accepted that this is something which was best for the both of us. Mia was very happy when we broke the news to her of us getting married. It was mostly a marriage of convenience. It was a week since we got married, but I never felt there was any change in mine or Brian's behavior towards each other. The only good thing was that Mia was very happy to spend time with Brian and would always be excited to have breakfast with the both of us. My marriage had always been dull and boring from the beginning. Brian became the lawful owner of my dad's firm and I became a full-time homemaker. My life got so monotonous after getting married that within weeks I felt that it was a mistake marrying Brian. He was very good with Mia, but his equation with me was meh. To sum it up in one word, we would only talk when required and mostly about work and Mia. It felt like we had nothing else to talk about. I started feeling suffocated and wanted to be loved. I wasn't getting that from Brian, that was for sure. I began longing for the passion and affection that seemed to be missing from our relationship. The lack of emotional connection left me questioning if I had made the right decision in marrying Brian. The firm was doing well after a long time, thanks to Brian for his management skills. He hired a personal assistant for himself, which I felt was a bit much, but obviously I did not mention that in front of him. He treated his personal assistant more like a handyman than an assistant. He would make him do all kinds of jobs, which were not even a part of his job. He would make him pick Mia from school, get Brian's coffee or his laundry from the dry cleaners, and sometimes even drop me off somewhere to shop. I felt a little bad for the assistant, thinking he must have been so happy when he got the job, but he would be regretting the job now, as he was doing nothing more than driving everyone around. The personal assistant's job description seemed to have been blurred, as he was constantly being tasked with errands and chauffeur duties. It was evident that his skills were being underutilized, leaving him feeling undervalued in his role. One day Brian's assistant was supposed to drive me to a store. I started a conversation with him. He told me that his name was Alex and this was his first job. No wonder he agreed to anything and everything that Brian would ask him to do. I could clearly see that Brian was taking advantage of Alex needing the job and making him do things that were not even a part of his contract. He was a young and naive guy who was optimistic about everything in life. I felt nice after talking to him. He dropped me off at the store and offered to pick me up once I was done. We continued our conversation, and there was something about him that was very charming that I never wanted this conversation to end. As days went by, I looked forward to my interactions with Alex. He had a positive attitude, and that inspired me to get out of my monotonous life and experience new things. He became friends with Mia as well as Alex would help Mia with her homework and assignments. Their friendship grew stronger as they spent more and more time together, and Alex's willingness to assist Mia with her schoolwork only deepened their bond. Despite the age difference, they found common ground and enjoyed each other's company, making their interactions all the more meaningful. It had been 2 years since Brian had taken over with the company. The office had practically become his second home. Brian would spend most of his time in the office making sure that everything was well organized and things were happening at the pace that he wanted. I could see a shift in his attitude where he had become more and more of a tyrant, making sure that his orders were followed without any questions. Whenever I went to the office, I could sense an air of intimidation around him. I had talked to him about the way he was managing things, and I asked him if he could be a little humble and polite with the people working for us. He gave me a smile and told me that I knew nothing about managing a company, so it would be better if I kept my advice to myself. He was doing a very good job at running the company, and he did all of that without my advice and would probably be doing that going forward even without taking my advice. I felt a little bit of anger and disappointment because first of all, it was never his company, it was my dad's, and maybe I knew nothing about running a company, but I sure knew how to treat people. The way he treated people was not something my dad would be happy with either. Secondly, I was still the chairman with the maximum number of shares, so I could throw him out anytime I wanted. In these 2 years, Alex's job role had shifted from being a brilliant personal assistant to mostly driving me around. Alex would accompany me everywhere I went, and I thought of taking him along with me instead of asking him to wait for me in the car. We spent most of the time together, which led to me thinking, what if I had not been married to Brian, then maybe something could have happened between me and Alex. Every day when I was with Alex, this thought crossed my mind, and one day out of the blue I couldn't stop myself and kissed him. I could see the shock on his face when he realized what I did. I told him that I was sorry for my behavior and it wouldn't happen again. I don't know what I was thinking. It was awkward between me and Alex for some time, but then we forgot about the kiss and continued our conversation. We were in the parking lot of a supermarket one day and were about to leave for home when I slipped and fell down. Alex picked me up and helped me get in the car. He was so close to my face that I couldn't resist myself. I kissed him and he kissed me back. We made out in the back seat of the car. After 10 minutes I realized where we were and what we were doing. I cleared my throat and told Alex that all this was a mistake. He himself felt very sorry for what happened and started driving. There was silence in the car on the way back home. I ran inside and lied down on the bed. I couldn't stop thinking about how effortless it was for me to be so close to Alex. He made me smile, he spoke to me and listened to me. This is what I wanted from Brian, but never understood this. Alex made me feel special and loved. After today, whenever we had a chance, I and Alex would make out, be at the car, my room, even in the bathroom at times. It was thrilling and exciting to sneak out of a party and make out with Alex. Alex was not that good at sex, but was ready to learn and experiment. We would do role plays when we had enough time. I loved this life of mine. Brian would always be engrossed in work, hardly making any time for me, so it was easy to blame him for his absence. However, deep down, I knew that my actions were driven by a desire for attention and affection. Despite the thrill of sneaking around, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness in my relationship with Brian. I longed for a connection that went beyond physical intimacy and yearned for someone who would prioritize me emotionally. My encounters with Alex were turning out to be more and more wild and romantic. This was causing me to distance myself from both Brian and Mia. I found myself caught up in the whirlwind of passion and excitement that Alex brought into my life. The intensity of our connection made it difficult for me to focus on anything or anyone else, leaving Brian and Mia feeling like distant memories in comparison. This led to more and more arguments between me and Brian whenever we had any conversation. Brian had recently brought in a new rule in the company which I was not in favor of. I asked Brian the same when he was getting ready for work. We were having an argument about Brian forgetting that this company belonged to my father. He was just a caretaker and Mia and I were the original owners of the company. He just had that power of attorney to run the company but was not exactly the owner of it, so he better behave himself. I was still the chairman and had every right to make decisions on behalf of the company. He told me that he was the one who had been taking care of this company for the past 5 years after my father passed away without any issues and major setbacks. He had every right over the company just the way I did. I told him that he had no rights on the company or over me, and just like he never owned the company, he never owned me as well. He told me that I was his wife and he had every right over me. I told him that he never had rights over me or my body, and I would keep pleasing my body with Alex the way I had been doing all these years. Brian looked at me in disbelief as he was unable to make sense of what he was hearing. I realized what I had said the moment I saw his expression and immediately regretted what I had just blurted out without thinking. Oh God, did I just mention my affair to him without realizing it? There was no taking back what I just mentioned. I tried to think of something quickly that I could say to cover up for my blunder. Brian was smart enough to catch up on my lies. He kept asking me to repeat what I just revealed. I told him that I was just angry and did not mean what I said. He immediately called Alex and asked him to come to our home. When Alex came, he asked me to leave them alone. I don't know what went on between them. I was waiting outside, walking up and down nervously. Alex then walked out after a few minutes and, without even giving me a glance, left looking petrified. It was my time to face Brian. I went in hoping for him to scream at me for my affair with Alex. To my surprise, he hugged me and said that it was not my fault. Alex had other intentions and I was so naive to fall for it. He said he fired Alex and would make sure to be there for me. He also said that he was sorry for not being available in my life and giving only work his priority. I was shocked with his behavior as I had not expected this kind of a reaction from him. I decided to play along with his narrative. I saw a big change in Brian after this incident. He started being extra sweet to me and was spending time with me and Mia just like he used to before we got married. I welcomed this change, and maybe this incident had made him change for the better. I made up my mind not to reach Alex and complicate things when finally everything was falling in place. Brian was investing his time in bonding with Mia. They connected very naturally right from the time he walked into our house when Mia was a kid. I was happy to see Mia laugh and smile a lot. I now started seeing Brian as my husband and a father figure for Mia. I did not need anything more. It had been almost 7 months since Brian found out about my affair with Alex. I must say that things have been pretty good since then. We went on a few vacations as a family. We did things that we used to do when my parents were alive. We were slowly making progress as a family, and I loved that all issues between me and Brian had been resolved. Mia had become so fond of Brian that he would pick her up and spend time with her even after her classes. I was not the only person she had to rely on. That was something that gave me a lot of peace. One day when I came back from my spa session, I saw Mia in her room talking over the phone about being scared and not knowing what to do. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help but intrude to know what was going on. I barged in the room and asked her what was wrong. She said that it was nothing that she wanted to discuss with me. I knew something was seriously wrong because Mia would never ever hide things from me and talk to me this way. I decided not to push her and maybe ask Brian to talk to her when he got home. Till the time Brian got home, I kept imagining scenarios of Mia having trouble with a boyfriend that she probably has. I was not even sure if she had a boyfriend. In the past few months, I had been involved very little in her life that I now realized how distant I had become. Was that the reason she was not letting me in on her problems? I waited for Brian to come and told him that there is something wrong with Mia that I was worried about and wanted him to talk to her about it. He smiled and said that it was not a problem and asked Mia to come to our room. She came in and sat nervously at the edge of the bed. Brian walked up to Mia and told me that he had good news to share. He looked at Mia and held her hand and told me that Mia was pregnant. I fell on the ground. How could she do this, and how is this good news? Before I could respond, Brian told me that Mia was pregnant with his baby and it had already been 4 months. I could not register all of this in my brain. I was blank at the thought of Mia being pregnant. She was just 18, and how could Brian have done this to her? She looked up to him as a father figure, and this was how he treated her? I fumbled for words as nothing made sense. Was this a prank? Were they trying to mess with me? I mean, it couldn't be real. There was no way that Mia was pregnant, and that too with Brian's baby. I was very sure that this was a prank, and I did not want to fall for it. Mia broke down and started crying, telling me that she was sorry. This was a bit too much and could not be a prank. I looked at Brian and he looked serious. He told me that all this is true and they got really close in the past few months. It all happened too quickly for them to realize what had happened, and when they did it was too late. Brian asked Mia to leave us alone so we could talk and find a solution. Mia was still crying when she left and shut the door behind her. After Mia left, Brian looked at me and sat beside me on the floor. He lifted my face and asked me if I was angry. I did not understand what he meant by angry, and that's when he gave me a wicked smile and told me that this is what I would get if I ever tried to cheat on him. This was my punishment for having an affair behind his back and being proud about it. He told me that he kept thinking about what he could do to make me regret having an affair with Alex. He kept pondering over this question, and then he realized that there were only 2 things that mattered to me in my life. So he formulated a plan to make sure he snatches both the 2 things from me. After we had an argument where I had accidentally spilled out about my affair, he realized that there was no point in him getting angry or screaming at me or demanding for a divorce. He knew that all this would only cause him to lose a lot of things. So he cleverly made me think that my affair was not my fault and I was just manipulated into having an affair. He acted all loving and caring to both me and Mia, that we never once doubt his intentions behind the sudden change. All he did was buy time to transfer all the company shares that I and Mia had to him. In the meantime, he started making advances towards Mia in a romantic way and made her feel that he could be more than a friend. Now when I look back, all the vacations that we went on were his way of showing Mia what all he could do to make her happy. Everything he did since he got to know about my affair was to take revenge from me. He made sure that I lost my father's company and also my lovely sister, who I could not live without. I must say that he was both cruel and meticulous in carrying out his plan. Not once did I ever get to know his true intentions behind all this. I was so stupid to believe everything he told me and was willing to give him another chance. I did not have the energy to hear any more, so I broke into tears and fainted. I woke up after some time. There was no sign of Brian, so I decided to go to Mia's room and check on her. Her room was locked. I could hear whispers coming from inside. I knocked on the door, and after a minute Brian opened the door. I ignored him and looked at Mia, whose eyes were swollen from all the crying. I called for her and she hid behind Brian. What did he do to my sister that she was scared of me instead of accusing him of doing this to her? I did not know how he manipulated Mia into believing that he would be there for her. I told Mia that I wanted to talk to her alone, but she denied. She said she would be comfortable if Brian was with her when she spoke to me. I could not believe what I was hearing. She was my sister, why would I need Brian to be there when I talked to her? All this was sounding so ridiculous. Brian looked at me and gave me a wicked smile, and I knew there was something that he had told Mia which was not letting her open up to me. I did not give up and tried again and asked Mia if we both could talk alone as sisters. She looked at Brian, probably asking for his approval, to which he nodded. After Brian left, I made sure I locked the door and asked Mia to sit on the bed. I made her comfortable by telling her that I was her elder sister and I was there for her in this difficult time. I told her I was willing to listen to anything that she has to share, and if there was a problem then she could share it with me. She initially hesitated, so I gave her some time to get comfortable. After about 5 minutes of silence, Mia finally spoke. She told me that she was sorry about stealing my husband. She told me that she did not intend for things to turn out this way, but they did because I was the one responsible for all of this. This was something that I wasn't expecting from Mia. She told me that in the last few months she had been observing how hard Brian was trying to keep me happy. But she always saw me being rude to Brian and not respecting him. I wanted to tell her that all this was not true and I didn't know which world she was living in, but I decided to let her continue. She told me that Brian would arrange all these holidays to get closer to me, but I was always busy with my spas and shopping and I did not give him enough time. She felt sad for him and started spending time with him and got to know what an amazing person he was. On one of the holidays, Mia had jokingly told Brian that she wanted to try alcohol. Brian sneaked some alcohol in her room and asked her to taste it. She wanted me to be there when she drank alcohol for the first time, but I did not pick up her calls. This made her sad, but she did not want to neglect Brian's effort, so she tried it and did not like it. Then they fell on the bed laughing, and that was the first time they kissed. They both laughed about it and started tickling each other. And just like that, Brian got on top of her and started kissing her head. She did not understand what was happening at first, but when she did, she was actually enjoying it and didn't want it to stop. They kissed for a few minutes and started undressing each other, but then Brian stopped and told her this was wrong. Mia was the one who wanted to keep going as she was experiencing all this for the first time, so Brian continued, and that is how it all started. She was crying hysterically as she continued talking. She told me that Brian was her first love and he made her feel so special that she could not lose him. He made her feel loved and valued. He made sure he made enough time from his busy schedule to spend time with her. She told me that she felt bad about cheating on me with my husband, but she also knew that both me and Brian were not happy in our marriage. She said that she felt that she was not doing anything wrong and was actually saving us from a bad marriage. She knew that it was wrong to be pregnant with someone else's baby, but she was so much in love with Brian that she was ready to keep the baby. She said that this was all she had to say and she was sorry for everything that would cause me pain, but she does not regret any of it. Listening to Mia talk, my expression changed 1,000 times from being surprised to disgust to plain disbelief. I could not believe that it was Mia I was talking to. All this was happening behind my back for the past few months, and here I was thinking that he was trying to become a family man. I know that at this point there was no use talking to Mia about Brian being an asshole, as there was no way she was going to believe what I had to tell her. I just told her that it was not her fault and that I was not angry or disappointed with her. She was my little sister and she is going to be that for the rest of her life no matter what. I do not want to burden her with all of Brian's lies and manipulations, as she was already going through a lot, so I let her be and asked her to rest. My head was spinning as I made my way to my bedroom. I saw Brian sitting on a chair waiting for me with a smile pasted on his lips. I could tell from his smile that he knew what went down between me and Mia even without being in that room. I just looked at him with disgust in my eyes for what he had done to my sister. He asked me very politely if Mia was okay. I looked at him and said that he shouldn't be bothered about her. He gave me a bunch of papers and asked me to read through them and get back to him if I had any doubts. I was very sure they were divorce papers and I was ready to sign them. I did not want anything to do with this man and wanted him out of my life as soon as possible. I flipped them open and saw that they belonged to the company. He now owned the highest amount of shares in the company that belonged to my father. How could this be possible? Mia and I together held 85% of the shares, so there was no way that he owned 90% of the shares. I looked at the papers in confusion and told him that if these were fake, then I was going to sue him without hesitation. He smiled at me and said they were real. He then handed me the papers where Mia had transferred all of her shares to Brian. My heart sank as I was not ready to accept it. He not only got my sister pregnant but manipulated her into transferring her shares to him. So now he had both my father's company and my sister at his disposal. He could do anything he wanted with either of them, and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt so helpless in this situation. He took back all the papers from me and grinned at me. He told me that I should have respected him when I had the chance and he wouldn't have been so cruel with me. I looked at him with hatred and went to the bathroom. I sat on the floor and could sense my entire world crashing down on me. I knew that there was nothing I could do to protect my company or my sister. It has been a week since the truth about Mia's pregnancy and we losing all our company shares came to light. The last week has been really difficult as I've been trying to find solutions to get our shares back and also to convince Mia to get an abortion. To be honest, I've made no progress at both these things. I feel lost, defeated, and crushed. I have no hope left. My energy keeps draining as it is very difficult to make an 18-year-old understand that the man she has been dreaming about does not exist. It is all a lie and a smokescreen presented to her to make her hate her sister. Brian has such a strong hold on Mia that she would only talk to me after consulting with Brian. It has been very hard for me to keep my anger under control and dealing with Brian in a nice and sophisticated manner. I am writing this post in the hope that someone out there could advise me on how to convince my sister to get an abortion. I don't want her to live her life with the baby of a person who I knew was going to abandon her soon. I am not bothered about the company or the shares at the moment. All I want is for my sister to be safe. I'm begging anyone out there who could give me a solution to save my sister from such a cruel and cunning person. I would highly appreciate any ideas or solutions to save my sister. Thank you all for your patience and for listening to my story and helping me and my sister out. Update. Thank you for all your replies and support. This has given me strength to fight for myself and my sister. I have tried to rebuild my bond with Mia. I am actively working towards building a relationship of trust with Mia so that I could let her see Brian's true face. I know that it is not going to be easy to reason with Mia to stop looking at me like her enemy and to believe what I have to say about Brian. I have come to the conclusion that there was now no point in forcing Mia to abort her baby as it was too risky. I did not mind her keeping the baby, but getting rid of Brian from our lives was a priority. I tried to use some of your ideas to help me get rid of Brian's hold on Mia. Brian came in one day at breakfast and told me that if I was to file for divorce, he had Alex ready to confess about his affair with me. He even had pictures of us together that would help him prove the affair. He told all of this in front of Mia to show her what kind of a wife I had been to Brian. This was just to gain more sympathy from Mia that I was the villain in this marriage. I was the one who cheated on my husband, and even after that he had been too good to me. I could see his cunning and manipulative skills. He kept telling Mia that I was the one not willing to divorce him, and that was the only reason why he could not be with her. Mia, being too young, would believe anything that he told her and gave me a cold shoulder when I tried talking to her in Brian's presence. Once he was sure that Mia was totally in his control, he slammed the divorce papers on my face. We went to court where he made Mia take the stand and admit that I cheated on him. Obviously, I lost the case and had nowhere to go. The house belonged to Mia, which was being transferred to Brian during my divorce trial. Once he had the house under his name, he kicked Mia out of the house. Both Mia and I were homeless and had nowhere to go. I went and begged Brian to let us stay in our house and we would stay put without causing any trouble. I told him that Mia still had his child and I could not take her anywhere in this condition. This was the least he could do for us. He finally agreed after a lot of pleading. Mia is now 7 months pregnant. We are living in our own house as slaves. I see no light at the end of the tunnel for us. The only thing that keeps me going are the messages and good wishes I get from all of you to hang on and never lose hope. Thank you all for everything you have been doing for me and my sister. I would forever be grateful for your kind words that give us hope to live. I will keep you updated if there is something worth updating. hoping to stay alive and positive till then.
You can't make this shit up. I found my husband has 4 different affairs through one of his friends. Hello, Reddit. I've been a huge fan of this platform for a while now. I've read a lot of stories and even people's craziest experiences, so I feel it is appropriate that I share my story on here. My experience is so crazy that I'm still baffled by it. I found out that my husband was cheating on me with 4 different women. Yes, 4 different women. And I never would have found out if not for one of his friends who felt that I should know. I feel so confused and disturbed. I don't even know how to confront my husband on this. I'm still pretending as if all is well. I'm hoping that by sharing my story here, I'll get some advice on what to do and also get some respite and clear my head. I know you're probably wondering how he kept the charade up without me ever knowing, and I honestly don't even have an answer to that question. Also, my husband was a very good liar, and I'm sure he never brought any of them to the house. But first, backstory. My name is Taylor, and I am a 29 female, and my husband, Justin, a 30-year-old man. We dated for 6 years and have been married for 2 years now. We live in the United States. My husband and I met in college. A friend introduced us, and we immediately hit it off. A few dates, and soon we were fully dating. Then we decided to take the next step and move in together. Of course, it wasn't easy. We had our struggles, but I honestly thought we would go the distance. Soon after dating, we decided to get married. Our wedding was absolutely beautiful, and it will always be a special day for me. Now, my husband worked from home while I worked in an office, which was very stressful but paid very well. It wasn't small, but it was no HR nightmare either. Bills were split 30-70 between us. That is, I paid 70% while he paid 30%. While chores were split 70-30, he 70, while I 30 as he was home more. We didn't have any kids, but we were planning on having some a few years down the line. Thinking back now, there were a few suspicious instances where my husband acted suspicious. But my husband was such a good liar. He easily escaped my questions, and even when I searched his device, I found nothing. About a week ago, I was about to go to work. I had a mild stomach ache, nothing serious, or so I thought. My husband was home. We talked right before I left, and he even mentioned he would stay in at home as he didn't have any plans today. I got to work, and my stomach ache only got worse. It got so bad that I got sent home to take drugs and rest. However, on getting home, I realized my husband wasn't home. I thought my husband had probably gone out to get something from the grocery store or something. I had a spare key so I could get into the house. I got in, took some meds, drank some tea, and went to bed. I woke up about 4 hours later, and my husband still wasn't back. That was when I started to get worried. I called him, but he wasn't picking up, so I called his close friend Dan. However, Dan said he hadn't heard from him either. A few hours later, my husband came back, and upon asking him where he went and why he wasn't picking up, my husband said he was at Dan's. But I immediately called him out on the lie and told him I had called Dan, and Dan said he hadn't seen him. So how could he have been at Dan's? However, my husband laughed and corrected himself and said that he meant to say Marco, that he had been at Marco's. Marco is another friend of my husband. I wanted to ask him to call Marco and put the phone on loudspeaker and ask him what they did while he was at his house. But honestly, I know Marco. He'll lie. I've never liked him. He's one of those macho alpha guys that are way too full of themselves and is a staunch supporter of the bro code. He'll definitely lie and say Justin was at his house even when he wasn't. So I decided to believe my husband and just drop the topic. However, I was still a little suspicious and decided to check my husband's phone once he went to bed. I waited till he was asleep and then went through his phone, but I found nothing. Back then, I was so glad that I had found nothing because I had been cheated on in the past, and it wasn't a pleasant experience at all. Yesterday, my husband and I, as well as our friend group, well, mostly my husband's friends, met up for dinner. It consisted of me and my husband, Dan, and his girlfriend, Marco, a female friend of ours, and 2 more of my husband's male friends. We all had dinner at the restaurant. Everyone pays for their stuff. We chatted, and then we even went to a bar afterwards. Something that stuck out, however, was a female friend telling us about how she dumped her husband of 2 months. The husband wasn't part of our friend group, and they didn't date for long, so she never introduced him to us. She said she dumped him because he had cheated on her. She then lamented jokingly that men these days weren't trustworthy. I laughed and told her my husband was trustworthy, to which my husband nodded and everybody laughed. However, I noticed that Dan scrunched up his nose when I said I trusted my husband. I didn't think too much of it, though. A few hours after my husband and I got home, however, I noticed I had a text from Dan, and he said he had something to tell me. I remembered what happened at the bar, and I asked him if it had to do with why he scrunched up his nose at the bar, and he said yes. He said he wouldn't tell me on the phone and that he would prefer we meet up somewhere, preferably tomorrow. I was a bit surprised, but agreed. Then he said not to tell my husband. I was surprised, as I typically told my husband everything, but I was very curious, so I agreed. I inwardly decided afterwards that if whatever Dan told me was Dan's private business and he just needed a listening ear, I wouldn't tell my husband, as I respect Dan's privacy. But if it was something about me or my husband, I would tell him. The next day, I went to work as usual. Honestly, I was so curious about what Dan had to tell me. So the moment I closed from work, I rushed out to the cafe where Dan and I had planned to meet. Funny enough, Dan was already waiting for me. We ordered some coffee and snacks and then settled down. Dan seemed very nervous, and he had to take deep breaths lots of times. Of course, I waited patiently and even encouraged him to calm down, as there was no rush. Dan is an anxious and nervous person, but he is the sweetest person ever. After calming down, he revealed to me that the reason he had scrunched up his nose at the bar was that he knew my husband was cheating on me with 4 different women. My first instinctual reaction was to laugh, as I honestly believed he was joking. However, when he didn't laugh along and just looked at me with a sorry and pitiful expression, that was when I knew he wasn't joking. I was stunned. Dan explained that he felt very guilty. That's why he decided to tell me. He said I was a good person and didn't deserve to be cheated on like that. He said my husband usually went to visit them when I was at work. Sometimes he lied about boys' trips to go see them. Dan shared that he and the other guys usually lied and covered for my husband. At that point, I was on the verge of tears, but I was trying my hardest not to cry to avoid causing a scene. Dan noticed and stopped talking, consoling me. I told him I was fine and asked him to please continue. Dan then told me my husband had a second phone. How? He said the second phone was what he used for communications with the girls. Dan shared a whole lot of other instances where my husband had lied to me, things I never knew. I asked if he knew where my husband kept the second phone, but he said my husband had never mentioned it. I thanked him and even insisted on paying the bill because I was so grateful he had told me everything. To think I was so happy in our marriage, I thought he was loyal. I loved him. But after hearing this now, it is as if all the love I had for him has evaporated into thin air. And all that is left is my pained heart. I asked him if he had any proof in the form of messages and voice notes. I needed them for when I would confront my husband. He happily obliged and sent me some screenshots of convos in a group chat. Dan explained that apart from our general friend group, he and the boys had a separate group chat just for them. In the screenshots, there were convos of my husband telling the boys that he was away at one of his girlfriend's houses. If I were ever to ask, they should tell me they were on a boys' trip. He said my husband would gather them and they would go somewhere and take a shit ton of photos so my husband could use them and lie that he was on a boys' trip. I was really grateful for them. Another thing I asked Dan was if the other girls never got suspicious. Dan said he didn't know much, as my husband never told them much. He had also only ever met one of the girls, and that was because the girl had become curious and started questioning my husband about his life. Dan said the girl had mentioned feeling as if Justin, my husband, was hiding her, so Justin had taken her to meet Dan. Dan also said that whenever the girls got too curious, he would just dump them. He also mentioned that Justin had once said the reason why he had married me was because I was his favorite. Dan told me a few other things after this, but these were the main ones. And after that, the convo ended, and I went home. The moment I got home, my husband immediately noticed my mood and asked me what was wrong. He also noticed I wasn't home on time today, but I deflected and told him I had a headache. I'm in bed right now, and I don't know what to do. 8 years of my life wasted with a serial cheater. I'm thinking of waiting until he sleeps so I can search for the other phone. I'll update on what I find. Thanks for listening. ***update. ***. Hi guys. You probably remember me as the girl who found out her husband had 4 different affair partners. This post blew up way more than I expected. I have gotten a lot of requests for updates and also a lot of supportive messages. Thank you to everyone who has sent a message asking about my well-being and also giving me advice on how to move forward. As for asking for an update, so I guess here's one. Crazy things have happened. First of all, I no longer live with my husband, or rather soon-to-be husband. How did I get there? Let me explain. Remember, I said I was going to wait and search for my husband's other phone, and that's what I did. I waited until my husband went to bed. He's a fast sleeper, so that was relatively easy. After he had fallen asleep, I waited an hour extra just to make sure he was fully asleep. Then I started searching for the phone. It wasn't easy, I won't lie to you. My husband had hidden them where I would never think to find. I searched his clothes, the closet, everything, and I couldn't find them. I don't know what attracted my eyes to the shoeboxes. My husband loves sneakers, and he loves to keep them in boxes. I decided to search the boxes on a whim, because I had searched almost everything in the room and I couldn't find them. At that point, I was thinking that maybe they were in some other room. Maybe he had hidden them somewhere in the living room or maybe even the toilet, but I decided to check the boxes. I searched a lot of them, but they weren't there as my husband owns a sizable amount of sneakers. However, I finally found it in one of the sneaker boxes right under the sneaker. It was switched off, of course. I plugged it in and switched it on. It was charged. Funny enough, it didn't even have a password. And on it, I found so many things. It was crazy. I found out about the girls. There were 4, and he was even chatting up a 5th one, but it was obvious he and the girl hadn't gone far. They were still getting to know each other. There were so many things. So many of them, I was stunned. I was so shocked I started to cry. I cried for a while, though I did it silently so as not to wake up my husband. I went through the phone and they were just so much. He had been cheating on me for a long time, and not just with these 4, there were a lot of other people, but I'm guessing these 4 were the most recent ones. I took a lot of the screenshots, and I'm not even joking, I mean a lot, and sent them all to my phone. Then I collected all the numbers of the 4 girls because I decided inwardly that after I was done confronting my husband, I would send them evidence. Because from the messages they are sent to my husband, it was obvious they didn't even know he was married. One hilarious thing I noticed in the text messages was with the way my husband spoke to them. It was obvious he had implied to them that he was some kind of secret agent, and that was why he had to keep his life private from them, and they believed him. It was hilarious. Another thing I noticed that I couldn't help but be surprised by was that these girls didn't really know much about my husband. I mean, who in this day and age dates someone without knowing a thing about them? But hey, I didn't want to be too judgmental. I knew my husband could be pretty charming when he wanted to be, and these girls seemed a bit naive. Honestly, I felt sorry for them falling for my husband's lies. Another I noticed while scrolling through the phone, I stumbled upon a super recent chat between my husband and one of the girls. Glancing at the date, it hit me. They'd been messaging this very afternoon while I was slogging away at work. That must be his prime phone time. In the messages, my husband casually dropped plans to meet up with the girl the next day, which happened to be tomorrow. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony because that tomorrow was the day I would definitely confront him and expose all his lies. Anyway, I carefully put the phone back exactly where he had stashed it and headed back to bed. I decided to deal with this and confront him the next day. Before hitting the hay, I fired off a quick text to my boss, who is a night owl LOL, giving her the lowdown on the situation. We're pretty tight, so I spilled the beans and asked for tomorrow off. No surprises there. She was totally on board and granted me the day to deal with my issues. The next day, not having to hustle for work, I kicked back and chilled at home. No rushing, no prep stress, just a laid-back morning. My husband picked up on it and asked why I wasn't going to work. I just told him no, and I could see a bit of worry in his eyes. He couldn't resist asking what's up with the sudden change. I made up a story about feeling distant and wanting some quality time together, blaming my crazy work hours. He looked surprised, trying to reassure me, but feeling something was off, I dug deeper. I pointed out his subdued response and, grabbing the moment, asked him straight up if he was surprised because he couldn't go see Sandra, one of the girls but not her real name. When I dropped that bomb, you could hear a pin drop. The silence was that intense. My husband, caught off guard, tried to smooth things over with a laugh. I wasn't buying it, though. I interrupted him. He demanded to know who this Sandra was, but no way was I falling for his act. I told him straight up not to act surprised because I knew he was cheating, and not just with one but 4 other girls. His face, pure shock. The moment those words left my mouth, it felt like a ton of bricks lifted off my shoulders. I'd known for a while, and now it was out there. My calm turned into anger. I went off, yelling at him, asking how he could do this. He stood there, lost for words, trying to say sorry, but I wasn't having any of it. Tears started flowing as the weight of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. My husband had been cheating with 4 different women. I was full-on crying now. All the strength I'd been showing before seemed to crumble, and I felt completely overwhelmed. It was like the shoe I'd put up had finally dropped. He tried to console me, but I couldn't handle it. I pushed him away, telling him to stay far from me. How could he? How do you do that to someone? He attempted to defend himself, saying he loved me and it was a mistake. I shot back, saying, "You don't make that kind of mistake. How do you mess up and cheat with 4 people? Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 people." To make matters worse, this wasn't even his first rodeo. He was just unlucky enough to get caught this time. He'd been cheating on me for a long stretch, and I was oblivious to it all. Who knows how many women he'd been with? I started freaking out, thinking about whether he might have exposed me to STDs or who knows what. I had been loyal to him, and all the while he was out there cheating. I was overwhelmed with disgust, heartbreak, and a deep sense of sadness. Being near him felt unbearable. I didn't want to see his face. So, without hesitation, I headed straight to our room while he continued pleading and attempting to spin the usual cheater excuses. The seduction, the mistake, the please forgive me. I shut it all out. Ignoring his pleas, I grabbed a small bag, threw in a few essentials, and left as he desperately clung to me. I warned him to stay away, threatening to involve the police if he didn't. I needed to get away, so I headed to my brother's place. I didn't have the strength to explain the whole ordeal, but thankfully my brother sensed the gravity of the situation and didn't press. He did his best to make me comfortable, ordered some food, but I had no appetite. I just crashed into bed, seeking solace in a long nap. When I woke up from the nap, I checked my phone and found it flooded with messages, not just from my husband, but also from his parents. I don't know what tale he spun for them, but it seemed like he painted me as the villain. They were all sending messages, blaming me, saying it was my fault, and it wasn't just his parents. Even our friend group joined in. It was disheartening, especially from friends who knew he was cheating. The only person who didn't join the blame game was Dan. He messaged, expressing his sympathy for what I was going through and promised to explain the real story to everyone. I got back to Dan, thanking him and saying he's a real friend. Assured him not to worry, I'd handle the mess. Then, feeling like turning the tables, I made a WhatsApp group. Tossed in my folks, my husband's folks, my siblings. Even added my brother who was in the living room watching TV, my husband's siblings, my husband, all our friends, and of course the 4 girls he'd been cheating with. In the group chat, I called out those blaming me without knowing the facts, tossed in nearly all the screenshots to spill the truth, didn't hold back on my husband, declared we were heading for divorce, even called my husband's parents out for blindly supporting their son. After saying my piece, I left the group chat, leaving them to face the truth they'd been ignoring. After sending that group chat message, my phone blew up with messages. Friends reached out, apologizing and claiming they didn't buy into what happened. I didn't bother replying because, honestly, they seemed like fake friends. Some of them knew my husband was cheating and never let me in on it. I decided then and there that they were getting cut out of my life. My husband's parents and siblings tried calling, but I refused to pick up. Soon after, messages rolled in, this time less aggressive. They were asking me to forgive my husband, playing the everybody makes mistakes card. Seriously? Now they want me to forgive him? That was a no-go. Meanwhile, my husband was on a roller coaster of emotions, from begging and pleading to getting angry and hurling insults. He cursed at me, claimed I was crazy and delusional, and even said he only stayed married to me out of pity. According to him, I should be grateful he picked me. I just ignored his craziness. However, knowing my husband's penchant for craziness and petty actions, I made it clear that he'd better not mess with any of my stuff at the apartment. I warned him that if he did, I wouldn't hesitate to drag him to small claims court. I informed him I'd swing by sometime during the week to gather the rest of my belongings. He didn't bother responding to my message, probably fuming with anger. In the living room, I guess my brother finally glanced at his phone, probably after binge-watching TV. He walked into the room, looking bewildered. Seeing my expression, he understood I wasn't ready to talk about it. Instead, he suggested we go out that night to distract me from everything. My brother is the absolute best, and I'm grateful to have him. We ended up at a karaoke joint, and it turned into a night of laughter and fun. It was exactly what I needed to take my mind off things. A few days later, I was all set to grab my stuff from the apartment. Even though both our names were on the lease, I had no intention of sticking around. I figured my husband wouldn't handle the rent solo and would likely end up crashing at his parents' place. Honestly, not my problem. I shot him a message the day before, giving him a heads up about my visit. Since I still had the spare keys, I told him he could either bounce to spare me the awkwardness or just steer clear while I packed up my things. Seems like he opted for the stubborn route. I brought my brother along just in case my husband tried any nonsense. He looked all aggressive and mad when he saw my brother, so I knew he would have kicked up a fuss if my brother hadn't been there. While my husband kept on begging me to stay, apologizing and promising it wouldn't happen again, I just ignored him. My brother gave him a glare like he was invisible dust. Then my husband started bringing up the lease, asking how he'd afford the apartment. I bluntly told him that was absolutely none of my business. He looked furious, but I knew he wouldn't dare pull anything with my brother around. That gave me some comfort. We wrapped up packing, and as I was leaving, I made it crystal clear to my husband that we were heading for divorce. I mentioned getting my lawyer to whip up the divorce papers, which I'd be sending his way. I suggested he get some legal advice too, and then I walked out with my brother. That was just a few days ago, and honestly, I'm doing pretty darn well. My brother's been a champ at distracting me, and there are times I forget my husband even exists. The divorce papers will be ready soon, and I can't wait to send them to my husband, or should I say ex-husband. And that's a wrap, and I truly appreciate all the support and messages I've received. Thank you, everyone. I genuinely feel great and better. As a token of gratitude, I treated Dan to dinner again for cluing me in on the antics of my serial cheater ex-husband. Thanks a bunch. To anyone out there cheating on their partner, you seriously suck. Big time. Hopefully your partner catches on one day. Better yet, do the right thing and come clean now.